Certified Penetration Tester Professional, Module 5, Network Penetration Testing External. In this exercise, what we're going to do is we're going to look at enumerating a WordPress type of site. So when you think about it, WordPress is extremely popular. So in this lab, what we're going to do is use the tool WP Scan. Now, some of you might be wondering why we have it here instead of in the web application module. And the biggest reason for that is we're not trying to test a web application. We're just going to go extract the data from the actual site, right? So the first thing you like to do when you're doing external testing and you discover port 80 open, which of course is the web port, is you want to try to enumerate that, right? So before we actually look for the WordPress, let's scan the site and see what comes up with respect to the installed software and the version number. So in this terminal window here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the tool WetWeb. So the tool WetWeb is a nice little tool, but what do we always do before we ever run a tool? We see if there's a man page on it. And as it says here, it's pretty good. It identifies the actual technologies used by the website, which is what we want to be able to do. So it does a pretty good job. Now, sometimes it'll come up with an error, and that's the reality of our testing tools, especially when they're open source. Well, let's give it a shot here. Now, in the lab, you're going to have to scan and find your live targets, right? Whichever one's running port 80, of course, you're going to run WetWeb on. And what you're looking for in the output is WordPress. If you find WordPress in the output, then you're going to run WP Scan. But remember, this is the process of how you should do this when you're doing the scanning. And there I told you it got to the different types of things, and it comes back and gives us information. It's kind of hard to read, so sometimes what will help you on that is do a Control-A, and you can see some more stuff, but you see some information there, right? So, and unfortunately, that's just one of these things in this hack font of actual, so you can see different things. So you got the JavaScript, you got the information, text JavaScript, but there's what you're looking for. See that WP-admin? When you have that WP-admin, that's telling you you've got a WordPress site, right? So now once we know we have a WordPress site, we want to go to the next level. And you see over here the install.php, so we have a lot of different information about WordPress, right? So now what we want to do is we want to do the WordPress scan enumeration. But before you do that, you would want to populate your database with all these different versions of software so you can start looking for, are there any vulnerabilities from this attack surface? Remember, port 80 is open. We know we got a version of WordPress here. We got information about it and stuff like that. Now what we want to do is we want to extract more information. Okay, so now what we want to do, we want to go in and run a scan of the WordPress site. To do that, we run WP Scan, right? Now, before we do that, let's read the man page. Always good to read the man page, right? So different things we can do. So when you come in here, you see exactly what it is, a WordPress security scanner. So now that we know we have WordPress, we can go through, and it gives you the options and the different information. Now, another good thing to do, of course, is have Wireshark running while you're doing this. So we're just going to assume you've already done that, and we're going to do WP Scan, because remember, before you ever run these types of scans, you have to look at the tools to see what they do. So we're going to go WP Scan, --URL, self-explanatory. That's our site. And then we're going to do 192.168.0.9. And then -- enumerate. And from here, you can start enumerate plugins, everything else. All we're going to try to enumerate here is the actual users, right? So the enumerate you. So if all goes well, this should enumerate users, if there are any. There might not be any configuration, right? That's the reality here. Maybe they installed WordPress, but they didn't put any users. And in this case, that's exactly what's going to happen back, is we're going to try to enumerate the users, and you see it's not currently set up. But now look at something that's interesting here. It says it's not configured, so it's been installed, and it's sitting there waiting for you to go and try to create a new admin user. That's interesting. So we'll leave you to thinking about that while we go and we look at some different things we can do. And again, we're talking process here, right? So you always want to explore the process and understand what the process does. So now let's see if we can enumerate some more information. So it's the same command, we just change the different types of things. So what we do is we start enumerating different information. Now, in the case of what we're doing here, we're more than likely not going to get a whole lot of data, because what happened? We didn't configure it. So we found an installation of WordPress that hasn't been configured. But this is themes. T stands for themes. So when we enumerate the themes, all right, we get back and we see some information, right, still in install mode. So what we could do, and we might as well do that, let's go and see if we go to this URL that is telling us to use here, can we create an admin user? Let's see if it allows us to create an admin user or if it prevents it. So let's see what happens. Always worth a try, right? So the scanner is allowing us to extract information. Now, as I continue to say, over and over again, the process is the key. So once you understand the process and you get out and you do your industry stuff, or you sit for your CPENT exam, all right? Proxy server, well, we got some leftover config in here, so let's go into our preferences. Network, settings, make sure we turn off our proxy. So we obviously was doing some other stuff with this thing. And now we go here. So now we got the information, the site title, username, and those types of things, right? So different things that we have. Okay, so we could go in and create the user here. There's a lot of different things we can do, right? So if we site title it here, we'll say test. We'll say username. Since we have a WordPress site not actually set up yet, well, let's see if we can set it up. So we'll give it a username. What's a cool username? Hacker. We'll call it hacker. Yeah. Password, well, let's make a simple one so we know what we're doing, but it's got a strength indicator. It might not give us something. Let's try it. Let's find out. Let's do a $PA$W0RD, the Windows one. That's very weak, but that's okay. We're hackers. We don't care. Wonder if we got to put in an email address. Well, let's put in one, hacker@certifiedhacker.com. Looks like it's okay. So install WordPress, and then we go. See what happens. Do we get an error? Or did it install? It's thinking. Success. Hacker username, password, your chosen password. It looks like it might have worked. So let's come back over here, and now let's try to do our WP scan again. So as a reminder, we did it before. We're going to look at our WP scan to see if we can extract information, right? Go back to our hacker box. So we're going to do sudo WP scan. Let's see if we can find our user hacker. http://192.168.0.9 -- enumerate and you. See if we get any different results. Hey, wow, we got lots of different results, yeah? And look what we have, hacker. So there you go. Remember, as you go through these different types of processes, your job as a penetration tester professional, you got to analyze what's coming back and what you're looking at. Remember, we're still in the external position. So if filters are in place, in most cases they are, we have to deal with those. But the good news is usually the websites are going to be available. And that's why we're going through this type of thing in the external testing, because almost always you're going to be doing your website testing from external location. So now let's see if we got any themes we can find. Yep, there's our themes. And now you look through and you see, and you got all kinds of stuff we found in here, right? Now, we could go in and do the exploitation stuff, but remember, that's not our goal here. Our goal here is what? Our goal is to just look at how to extract data. We have web application testing where you can go in to do the different types of things. So now if we do the plugins, this is the plugins, right? Gives you the plugins. So now you can start seeing the plugins, you see different things, and now you start to get an idea. And what you have to do is you have to do your research and your homework, because WordPress plugins, there's lots of vulnerabilities in the WordPress plugins. So there's a chance, especially when you sit your CPENT exam, if you find a WordPress installation, you might have a vulnerable plugin. So inbound.io comes to mind when I think about that. Something to keep in mind. So now we have the plugins, right? Those types of things. So once you do this, now you what? You populate your database, right? So it comes up and gives you the information, gives you the different modules, and you come back here and gives you these references. So if you're not familiar with it, you probably want to make sure you're familiar with this before you go sit your CPENT exam, because you might run into these types of things. And you can see how all these different types of things, you got information, you got a nice reference to the GitHub here. When you go into the environment, remember you are always going to what? Do your research. So you want to make sure when you go into the environment, you've already done your research, and you see right there is the WordPress version 4.0.6. So now you go into your normal process of researching that version. Remember to populate your database with it. And once you've done that, hopefully you'll find some weakness that you might be able to leverage for access. But remember, as a professional tester, you mainly want the data. These are findings telling your client, hey, you're running an old version of WordPress 4.0.6. Those are the types of findings. You have this theme in place, right? Those types of things. All of those are things you want to be aware of as a professional tester. And with that, we will conclude the lab here.